Sex workers of Reddit, what's the weirdest kink a customer has asked you to fulfill? I was on a job at a new construction house and I was talking to the detail cop. Now this house being built was in the high millions and had a police detail protecting it 24/7 paid out of the owner's pocket with the police getting paid out. The reason is because one of the workers had a fetish for wood and got caught on camera jerking off on the custom woodwork that was being done. I was paid $200 to kick/knee a customer in the balls till he came. Only took about 4 times to make him come. Did it a few times. He even paid me $500 when I went out clubbing to do it in a corner of the club. I was a cab driver for several years. Night shift, ghetto. Loved that job. I had a regular escort who always requested me, probably because I didn't ask her for anything whilst driving her to her next John. She'd go up into an apartment, house, or hotel room, and have me wait. Sometimes a full hour, but rarely over 15 minutes. I never argued because waiting, and a return trip keeps the meter running longer. One time she came down after maybe 10 minutes. She looked half amused and half terrified. She said that the guy had her put on a muumuu and an old lady wig, then yelled at him while he took a shit, and, edit for clarification, during, he jacked off. Fucking weird. Freud would have something to say about that guy, no doubt. Not super crazy, but I had a guy approach me through Reddit and ask just to be able to give me money with no strings attached. There was a couple-month period during which he would gradually send me money in multiple $15 payments spread throughout the day. Sometimes we'd text too. Sometimes we wouldn't message for a week, but he'd still send me money and quietly wait until I felt like talking. He liked when I ignored him. And if we talked it turned him on when I was mean. He ended up giving me about $1,500 without him ever asking for so much as a photo. I think I might qualify as a one-time sex worker. One night, after riding the subway home from work, a guy followed me off the train and offered to buy the shoes off my feet. He stammered through some nonsense about being a sneaker collector and paid me $450 in cash for my old, sweaty canvas Vans. Totally worth the 2-block walk home in my socks. Had a roommate in college, 2000s, who did private adult videos by request only, basically expensive personalized video porn. She came home pretty bummed one day and I asked what was up. She said she had been paid $500 to put on an adult diaper and comically large baby bonnet and walk otherwise naked around a local college green space. The whole video was her walking around with her fingers in her mouth acting like a confused adult baby. At the end she was told to pee in the diaper and show the camera. When she thought she was done the director asked if she wanted to poo in the diaper for $1,500 instead of $500, saying the client asked if it was possible. She declined immediately and the director was I guess okay with it. She was bummed she missed out on making an extra $1,000 because she had pooped before going to work. We both laughed so fucking hard. What a ridiculous thought, darn, if only I hadn't pooped before work I'd be making some real money. A client pays me to teach him how to blow his nose properly, making sure to say key phrases like blow it clear. Another one set up a fantasy scenario where I receive an expensive vibrator in the mail, but when I open it, discover a tiny man that's stuck in it. He said what you don't know is that man was a factory worker that got stuck in the vibrator making it. I was obviously confused where he wanted me to go with this, but suggested I should try using the vibrator with the man attached. Nope. The client replied I can't come unless you destroy it. I love the lack of kink shaming here. Also, not a sex worker, but ex-military. Some guys aren't too shy about sharing even the most personal shit. One of my buddies had a kink with those horse girls that actually pretend to be horses. I mean they gallop around on all 4 and jump over the obstacles, the whole 9 yards. He grew up on a ranch too. Said what's wrong with combining the best of both worlds? That sentence raises more questions than 11 need answered. Not one myself. But I knew a reporter who had done a story on the infamous red light area of Mumbai. One of the stories that stuck with all of us is of this one guy who'd turn up at one specific date every month with a duffel bag. Now you'd think he'd bring kinky devices with him to use on the sex worker, but instead, he'd bring a full set of traditional Indian wedding attire. The sex worker told the reporter that this specific customer would pay her whatever she asked, as long as she'd wear the wedding clothes. He would respectfully wait outside the room till she changed, and then he would make her sit on the bed. He would pull up a chair, sit in front of her, and just look at her and weep. For 2 hours straight. Then he'd leave, without laying as much as a finger on her. Turns out, he had lost his wife to some freak accident hours after they got married, and it messed with him big time. One of the saddest stories I've heard, and it makes my heart ache immensely whenever I recount it. Nothing particularly exciting, to be honest. Kind of disappointing. Slightly more interesting requests included: 1. Pretending to be married and having to be quiet so we didn't wake the kids. 2. Armpit licking, surprisingly common. 3. Pretending to be a cat and meowing, crawling around and drinking out of a bowl on the floor. 4. Wearing pantyhose and being stretched and put into various yoga type poses while he sniffed me. Met more interesting folk in my day job, I think. I feel obliged to mention the human toilet though. I never met him, but some of the other girls said there was a guy who would pay girls to poo in his mouth. Apparently they would line up outside his room to do it. Not judging, but I don't think that I could ever do that. A customer had a fishing fetish, got fisher outfits for some girls like a raincoat or some shit, and brought a fishing rod, boots and all, and the girls had to act like they were fishing him while he was laying on the floor and moved like a fish. Craziest shit I heard, but whatever floats their boat, I guess. Not a sex worker personally, but I used to manage and bartend at gentlemen's clubs many moons ago. One night while I was tending the bar, one of the girls comes down to my bar and asks me for an empty beer mug. I give it to her, she runs off to the bathroom, then comes back out with it, full of urine. She then runs off to her customer, mug full of yellow liquid in hand. A bit later, she comes back with a mug, now empty, tries to give it back to me, and I tell her to throw it away. She does so, then proceeds to tell me that a customer paid her $300 for her to pee in that mug, and then he wanted her to watch him drink it, which she did. Beyond that, I saw guys come in, pay girls to clean mirrors and tables in the club, and they simply watched, though a few would even get up and help them with the cleaning they were paying them for. One guy would walk in, talk smack to every girl he could, and when one would finally get angry enough to slap him, he would pay them $100 on the spot. FYI, this dude was about 80 years old. Some guys would even come in at the start of a shift, would bring panties with them, and ask a few girls to wear the panties all day. They would then later show up at the end of the shift and pay the girls $100 and retrieve the used and worn panties. A lot of weird and oddball fetishes out there, but to each their own. I once attempted to get into selling feet pics many years ago. This one guy messaged me and said he'd give me $200 if I was able to track down his identity in 30 minutes based off of a few clues he'd given me. He told me his state and job, and some surrounding area clues. Wasn't able to find him. Guess I'm not the next Sherlock Holmes. He was very heavily implying to me that he wanted to be humiliated to people he knew in real life, and wanted me to have this power over him, that I knew his real identity, and could out him on his fetishes. Edit: I was unable to enter the feet pic selling community because, while my feet are very small and neat, perhaps cute to some people, apparently the angle of them isn't pleasing to the eye and everyone wants very long angled toes, which I do not have. Edit again. I seriously got gold for regaling my failed attempt to enter the foot porn community by being a bad hackerman / stalkeran. I feel like I'm in a psychedelic dystopia. Not me, but I heard this story from a friend of a friend who worked in a BDSM club. She had this client that would come in with a few bean bags full of nettles. It's a stinging plant for anyone not familiar. Wikipedia says they are not native to a lot of places. Anyway, then they put a tarpaulin down on the ground so they could roll him up in it with the nettles like a joint. Then she just kicked fuck out of him, and apparently that's what got him off. One of my favorite customers at my restaurant is a Southwestern, and she always tells me stories in exchange for a free boba. She's also the best tipper. The best story she's told me is a guy paying her $200 to just stand on his belly, nothing else, just stand there fully clothed. Dude didn't even jerk off or anything, and he made an appointment every time she was in town, lol. Cammed for a bit. Kinks I disliked the most, and unfortunately one of the most common to encounter, were the doms who strolled into the chat already talking down to me, ordering me around, and calling me pet names right off the bat. And then trying to keep that roleplay going during pay and kink negotiation, as if treating me like a sub would get them a better price and more access to my body. Aswads. Even the rape fantasy folks were more courteous about getting consent. Weirdest kink though. Was contacted by a couple different guys who wanted me to close up record myself farting into a jar and capturing it, and then mail them the fart jar. I didn't realize fart jars were in such demand. Another guy wanted me to record myself in my car, fully clothed mind you, as if it was a normal day, with my seatbelt on. He was very adamant about car safety. The request was to pretend like my car was a stick shift that had just broken down, and I didn't understand how they worked. He wanted me to jiggle the shifter, bounce in place, fiddle with controls and shake the steering wheel and grumble at the car, as if frustrated for a few minutes, and then reach over and start searching through my car's manual and reading aloud the terms as if very confused, and aloud wishing that I had a boyfriend who could help me. I got paid $200 for about 10 minutes of pretending to be confused while sitting in my car. Didn't even have to show it. He was very sweet and patient about the whole thing. 10/10 would film again. Pro tip to all kinky people. Respecting boundaries and clear communication will get many camgirls to do some truly wild shit. I'm dude who did weird stuff during college to earn some extra cash. My job was to go to these afternoon parties organized by these filthy rich housewife and do catering service in our undies. Undies were provided by the secret friendship company. If they would like us, they would put in a currency note of 50 hundredths in our undies and take a drank peek of the good stuff. Once a woman asked me to assist her for personal work to earn more cash. I told her that I will not have sex for money. She told me that I will not be required to have sex. I got on board. She took me to a room, paid me $5K, just to watch her slowly undress and cry. I initially got scared as I thought she is framing me for rape. But she calmed me down and only asked me to watch. She slowly undressed herself, while crying really loudly, and then she lied on the floor naked, bawling like a baby. There were actual tears and stuff. It was really sad for me, but $5K meant a lot during college days. Finally, she silently stood up, covered herself, went for a shower, while asking me to leave immediately. She took my number, and we made it a monthly routine. I was terrified every time she called me for the work. But I still did 7 to 8 sessions for the cash before I accepted that it's too weird for me. I couldn't sleep nicely for 2 to 3 nights after each experience. Not too fancy like other stuff here, but weird AF still. TLDR, rich lady paid me to watch her undress while crying. I was a dom. There was this guy who was absolutely infamous. Literally everyone knew him and had done a session with him. If a dungeon got a new girl on staff, they'd call this guy to see if he'd scare her off. He was obsessed with teeth. But he was a very old guy, so his fetish got mixed in with typical old guy things, which meant that he rambled at length about dental insurance. He was so infamous that one day I actually stumbled upon a little article written about him. Here there were also rumors that he paid desperate addicts to actually pull their teeth, but who knows. On the flip side, I also stumbled upon an article about a different infamous guy who used to come around to the dungeons and give us all pedicures, and he was genuinely a lovely man. We called him Footslet Giorgio. I ordered many a drink perched atop his carpet back in the day. But actually, neither of these are weirdest. Not my client, but did see the guy wearing reindeer antlers, like you might buy in the seasonal aisle of a drugstore around Christmas. Heard he liked to be called Rudolph. Seemed really off, maybe mentally challenged. Wish I was making this up, because it makes me sad to think about what would have given him such a fetish. I think the strangest I've ever gotten was a man who had a huge fetish for Disney characters, and I'm not even talking just Disney princesses. He loved shit like Lilo and Stitch or Pooh Bear. He regularly paid me several hundred to dress up as his favorite characters and basically verbally abuse him. It was a sweet gig while it lasted, however strange. Nothing really surprises me anymore after that one. Edit, this blew up way more than I expected. I'll try and get to everyone's questions and messages eventually. Thank you all for being so kind and open-minded.